Welcome to After the Last Dog, a co-hosted podcast for grooming and pet care business owners who are wearing all the hats and still trying to make the business run smoother behind the scenes. I'm Jennifer Opal. My episodes address the teams and training perspective.
And I'm Dara Forleo. I bring the owner's perspective. We're your hosts. Every week, we will both share an episode to the same business challenge, what's happening, why it keeps happening, and a solution for what you can do next. What hat are you wearing right now?
Today, I want to talk about when applicants ghost us and understand what our emotional investment is in it. It might sound silly to people who haven't been through it, but by the time we sit down and get into writing the job ad, we're already exhausted. And it's because we're not really starting fresh. Our body keeps the score. And your mind and body remembers the last 10 people who didn't work out, the extra time you spent training, the call-outs, the no-call, no-shows, and the employee that you may have kept longer than you probably should have. That's usually because the thought of hiring again feels worse than keeping them. Then we have to write that ad that hopefully attracts the right person. Writing a hiring ad feels like making a dating profile to me. I hate it. Trying to sound appealing without overselling it. And we have to be honest about what we need without scaring off the good people. And I always want to explain what makes the salon different. But so many ads say the exact same thing about being supportive, drama-free, and a great place to work. I just think it's freaking dreadful. Then after the ad's posted, the next part of the process happens. This is where we have to sift through a gazillion applications and figure out which one is worth our time. So that's usually when we send a few messages out and go back to the dogs. When we get back to them, if it's later in the day after the last dogs are gone, we can get in there and see who responded. And a lot of times I find some mixed messages from people. Some of them may respond to my message, some haven't. And then you've got those people who respond late in the evening and at 3 a.m. That's crazy. Because now we have messages sitting there when we wake up. I always wondered whether I needed to answer them before the salon opens or try to block out time later. And by then, a few more people have responded. So we've got to look through everything again and decide who we want to actually invite for an interview. That brings us to the next problem. Where are we supposed to schedule the interviews? My schedule was almost always full. And now, carving out 30 minutes out of a busy day just can sound impossible. The typical scenario was I have a plan when I go in the morning, but somebody calls out or schedule needs changing because of a cancellation or no-show with clients, or something happens in the salon. Things go sideways all the time. We know that. Those hiring messages are still there waiting, but a lot of times we don't get time to deal with them right away. That's how this whole hiring process can get exhausting, because it's not one project that we can sit down and complete. It keeps happening throughout the day and the week. And every time it does, we have to remember where we left off, who we answered, who still needs a response, and which applicants we're considering. And like I mentioned, the dogs, the clients, and the employees need help. So hiring can get pushed aside until the next small opening in our day. which means we're constantly picking it up without ever feeling like we're making progress. And then by the time you have enough people responding to schedule interviews, you're already tired of the process. And then I would feel like I needed to compare them again because new applicants had already come in by that time. And that anticipation is what finally made me realize I had to change the process. I'm going to use an analogy. So think about your favorite recipe. Let's say it requires one specific ingredient, but the store you normally shop at rarely has it. So you go there, you check the shelf, and it's not there. The next time you need it, you go back and check again. It's still missing. And now you're irritated because the store never seems to have what you need. Eventually, you're going to have to decide whether you're going to keep getting mad at the store or change the way you get that ingredient. You could find another store. You might order it ahead of time, keep an extra one at home, or find something else that works good enough when your first choice isn't available. And hiring works the same way. When you continue using the same ad, the same platform, and the same loose process, you're probably going to see the same problems. I use Indeed, and it's very frustrating. The free features are not always easy to find and choose. The paid option is way too expensive for a small salon. And the platform puts a huge number of people in front of you, but that doesn't help us make hiring easier. The platform gives us information. What happens next depends on how you use it. I finally realized that my goal wasn't to get as many applications as possible, because more applications usually mean more people we have to sort through. And then once I changed the process, I turned it into a personal challenge. I wanted to see how many people I could get to self-select out before they ever reached me. The fewer initial applications I received, the more I knew the ad was working. And that does sound backwards because we're taught to look at a big applicant number as a good sign. But we don't need 40 people clicking apply because they like dogs or because the job sounded interesting for a minute. We need someone who understands the work and is still interested after reading what the position actually involves. If people read the ad and realize the schedule won't work, the physical labor is more than they want, or the training expectations sound like too much of a commitment, that helps. They make the decision before we spend time messaging them. One of the most useful changes happened unintentionally when I started leaning into the specifics of the apprenticeship program in the ad. It wasn't just the word apprenticeship that changed the applicant pool. The ad included the actual commitment. People who applied could see that the program required 214 hours of technical instruction and 3,000 hours of on-the-job training. Those numbers made the position real. This wasn't a casual job where somebody could work around dogs for a few weeks and see whether grooming felt fun. It was a structured path into a skilled trade, and it required a serious amount of learning and hands-on practice. Some people saw that and decided not to apply. And that unintentional change was such a relief because I didn't have to reject them. The ad had given them enough information to decide that the position wasn't what they were looking for. The people who continued were approaching the opportunity differently. They understand that training is part of the job from the beginning, and they knew they were expected to build skills over time. And even if you don't have a formal training program yet, your ad can explain how someone will begin learning the position. So for bathers, you might say that new hires will first learn the salon's safety procedures, dog handling expectations, workflow, and quality standards before being expected to work independently. That small amount of detail tells applicants that they will be trained, but it also makes it clear that learning the job will require effort and follow through. So the position starts looking like the beginning of a career instead of a temporary job working with animals. For an ad looking for experienced groomers, you could explain how new groomers will be introduced to our scheduling process, client communication expectations, safety procedures, and quality standards before managing their schedule independently. Or it could say that you expect experienced groomers to be open to feedback and willing to adjust to the way our salon serves clients and cares for pets. That changes the quality and intent of most of the people who enter that hiring funnel. Now here's how I stopped giving away free rent in my head, because this major change was also on my side. Hiring got easier when I stopped emotionally investing in applicants before they'd done anything. An application did not mean I had found my next employee, and a response to a message did not mean somebody was serious. Even scheduling their first interview only meant that an interview had been scheduled. Before I created a process, it was easy to start thinking ahead. Kind of like in dating. You see somebody who looks decent on paper and start imagining where they might fit. Maybe they could fill the empty days on the schedule or help with the dogs that have been wearing everybody out. You begin solving future problems with a person you've never met. And then they don't answer, or they schedule an interview and never show up. It feels personal and disappointing because you've already started building something around them in your head. And this is human nature, to hope and look ahead. But we have to stop doing that. I didn't emotionally invest until they physically walked through the door. When I scheduled an interview, I would block 30 minutes. I already had my interview cheat sheet printed and sitting in a folder off to the side so that I didn't need to stop and prepare a new set of questions. If the applicant arrived, I opened the folder and conducted the interview. If they didn't arrive, I would rehydrate, have a snack, and go back to work. I had given them the amount of time that made sense at that stage, and I did not build my day or my hopes around them. That's when I kind of started thinking of it as taking off my worry hat and putting on my HR manager hat. That worry hat wanted to know whether this person might finally work out. The HR manager hat looks at the information in front of you and follows a process. So instead of getting caught up in whether I liked somebody or whether they seemed excited, I paid attention to the way they moved through the hiring steps. Their follow-through, communication, preparation, and their answers gave me something concrete to evaluate. It was a lot easier to make decisions once I had already decided what mattered for this position. Yeah, people still ghosted me after I changed the process, but it ended up costing me a lot less. I put right into the job ad that we had a 3-step hiring process: a phone interview, an in-person interview, and then a working interview. That alone actually started screening people out. Anybody who wanted a quick, casual path into the salon could see that this position was going to require some follow through. They were going to have to answer the phone, show up in person, and then come back again for a working interview. So they had to be in it to win it. That process also tells applicants something about the business. We have a system. We're paying attention to who moved through it, and we're not hiring somebody after one decent conversation. So people who didn't like structure were less likely to continue. And that's useful because they probably wouldn't have liked the structure inside of the salon either. The process gives people several chances to show whether they're serious, and it keeps me from doing all the chasing. Each time they complete a step, they earn the next level of my time and attention. And this same approach continues once someone's hired. Every employee's first day begins with the Introduction to the Salon course. I didn't have to figure out what to do with them if and when they arrived. I could welcome them, sit them down with the first online module, and let the onboarding process begin. While they're completing the course, I send their hiring paperwork and get the other pieces ready. That matters because some of those people just don't show up for their first day either. And before I had a set process, I would be emotionally preparing for that one person. I could have changed the schedule, planned training around them, or asked other employees to be ready to help. With the onboarding system already built, I did not create an entire day around somebody who hadn't proved that they'd show up. The process was ready and waiting for the employee instead of the business, the management, and the operations waiting for the employee. And that's a big difference. A structured process can be used again and again. It doesn't disappear because one applicant does. Sometimes salon owners feel like this approach makes hiring feel impersonal, and it doesn't have to. You can be friendly and respectful while still expecting people to participate in the process. A serious applicant will usually appreciate knowing what's happening. They know what the job involves, what the interview process looks like, and what they will be expected to learn if they're hired. That structure can also help you avoid hiring someone mainly because you enjoyed talking to them. Some people interview extremely well. They're friendly, easy to talk to, and seem excited about everything you say. And that doesn't always mean that they're going to enjoy the physical work or follow salon standards once they're hired. Somebody else could be nervous during the interview, but they read the instructions, arrive prepared, and show that they're willing to learn. So this process gives you more to work with than a first impression. Because hiring gets harder when we're trying to decide what matters while we're looking at 30 different people, before the ad goes up, we need to decide what the minimum requirements are for that position. For bathers, one of my lines in the sand was at least 2 years of work experience. It didn't have to be grooming experience. In fact, fast food can be some of the best experience because those employees had already learned how to follow a process, work at a steady pace, clean up after themselves, take direction, and use basic equipment. A small salon shouldn't have to teach somebody how to function in a workplace or operate a broom at the same time that we're teaching dog handling, bathing, drying, safety, salon flow, and things like that. So that requirement went directly into the ad. If somebody doesn't have at least 2 years of work experience, they're out before I ever have to spend time deciding on whether I should make an exception. The rest of the requirements depend on the position. A bather needs to understand that the job is physical, dirty, noisy, and fast-moving. They also need to be able to learn safe handling. They need to have attention to detail and work through several tasks without losing track of the other dogs. An experienced groomer needs to understand the salon's quality, scheduling standards, client communication, and the way the team works together. Once those expectations are clear, the ad could begin filtering for them. The screening questions and interviews help me see whether the person matched what I had already decided that the job required. We're not looking for a magical unicorn who already arrives knowing everything. We're looking for someone who meets the minimum standards, is willing to enter the training process, and or can work within the standards of our salon. So by the time somebody reaches the interview stage, we already know what we're looking for, what eliminates them, and what step comes next. That's one of the ways that I stopped giving people the same amount of time, attention, and hope before they'd earned it. So what's your reset for this week? I want you to add one requirement to your job ad that you can verify from the application or resume before you contact the person. Remember, for my bather position, that was at least 2 years of work experience. You can see it right in their work history. And if it's not there, they didn't move forward. Another requirement could be that they have at least 1 full year at a previous job, a required certification, or prior work in a physical, fast-paced environment. Something specific that I had looked at is whether the positions that they had been at required thought and decision-making processes. So choose one requirement that matters enough to eliminate somebody and put it in the ad. Then I want you to create one saved message for the people who pass that first screen and use it to confirm something important that the resume does not show. For example, are you available to work Saturdays? Are you able to lift and safely handle dogs up to 50 pounds? Here's one of my favorites. Do you have reliable transportation that allows you to arrive on time for every scheduled shift and stay until your assigned work and the team's closing responsibilities are finished? You can put together a question or two based on the issue that's caused the most problems in past hires. If availability's been the problem, confirm the schedule. If transportation or physical demands have caused trouble, ask about that before offering an interview. Now the ad filters people out who don't meet your minimum requirement, and the first message confirms one practical detail before you give up interview time. Thanks for listening to After the Last Dog. I have a hiring and onboarding course, and also there's a link to the Introduction to the Salon course that we use in case you're interested in utilizing that for some of your first hires. That's it for today's episode of After the Last Dog. Take the action step from today and use it where it fits your business this week. You can find more support and resources at growinggroomers.com or through the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time after the last dog goes home.